This is so weird.
Hi, my name is Jasmine De La Rosa, and I will be speaking on oil consumption in the United States for my Fundamentals of Speech class. The United States consumes about 7.28 billion barrels of oil every year. 1 barrel of oil is equivalent to 42 liquid gallons. This is averaging the use of 20 million gallons of oil every day. This might not seem like much considering the United States has about 327 million people, but most cannot drive due to age or other issues. You might be wondering, why do I need to care about this? For me, as an environmentalist, reducing my usage can help reduce my carbon footprint. But as a driver, reducing my usage can help me reduce how much I spend on gas. Now, I have a question for you guys. How many of you drive here? And how many of you pay for your own gas? The average driver spends about $117 per month on gas, when gas is averaging about $2.70. But oil doesn't magically appear from the pump, ready for use. From the pump to your car, it first begins from being drilled from a country. This country is most likely part of OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. There are a total of 14 nations involved in OPEC, and the top 5 that produce the most oil is Canada, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Venezuela, and Iraq. The United States Energy Information Administration states these countries exporting the major petroleum, and the 5 totaling around 34.6%. But not all countries that produce a lot of oil are included in OPEC. Russia, exporting 11%, is not a member. From the ground, petroleum can go multiple ways. Petroleum can be used for transportation fuels, fuel oils for heating, electricity generation, asphalt and road oil, feedstock for making chemicals, plastics, and synthetic materials. Transportation fuels alone can be split into 3 categories. Jet fuel at 10.7%, regular fuel at 26.7%, and gasoline at 62.6%. Knowing where oil comes from and what it is used for is only part of understanding the consumption of oil in the United States. There are main parts that are important: where it comes from, what it can be used for, and the effects of oil on every level. The first effect is the danger of oil rigs. Oil rigs are used to explore, extract, store, and process petroleum. There are 2 major facilities used for oil rigs, including oceanic and inland extraction. Bottom founding drilling rigs, otherwise known as jackup barges and swamp barges, and deepwater mobile offshore drilling rig units, which introduce semi-submersibles and drill ships. These rigs then force astronomical pressure on the Earth's foundation by using enormous force and the power to drill and extract the planet's natural resources deep within the ground. According to Time magazine, the risks are unavoidable. Workers are on shift for an average of 12 hours a day, dealing with highly combustible materials on a platform where cranes swing heavy equipment overhead constantly. There's no doubt that working on an oil rig is by far one of the most dangerous jobs. There have been many unfortunate incidents with offshore drilling rigs, and one of the most famous is Deepwater Horizon in April 2010. Workers had been concerned prior to the incident that materials used for drilling would buckle under pressure. The month before, an unreported accident had damaged the blowout preventer, which had gone uninspected for 5 years. Hours before the main explosion, survivors recalled there were warning signs, reporting of vibrations just hours before the fire. The oil rig burned for over a day before the structure sunk. Of the 126 people on board, 11 were killed and 17 were sent to trauma centers. Expectations that something will go wrong in an oil rig is guaranteed. Companies will often cut corners in order to save time and money, and in doing so, put the lives of workers at risk. According to the History Channel, in 1989, an Exxon Valdez oil tanker spilled a reported 11 million gallons of crude oil in Alaska, covering 13,000 miles of coastline and killing approximately 250,000 seabirds, 3,000 otters, 300 seals, 250 bald eagles, and 22 killer whales. Incidents that occur on an oil rig can cause oil spills, like Deepwater Horizon, which coat the surrounding water, wildlife, and beaches in a coat of oil. The liquid washes into coastal marshes, mangroves and plants, and seeps into every grain of sand on beaches. Even when marine mammals escape the immediate effects, an oil spill can contaminate the food supply. Once the floating oil sinks, it damages life under the water, killing fish and damages not only the ecosystem, but the economy. Following the Exxon Valdez spill, local fishermen went bankrupt and the surrounding towns suffered. The Exxon Valdez spill had been the largest and most harmful until the Deepwater Horizon. And although Valdez occurred only 30 years ago, the studies show that there are still thousands of gallons of oil trapped under the surface and on beaches. The Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District expresses that after a spill, concentrations of toxins are released into the atmosphere, and inhaling these oil droplets and particles are harmful to breathe and can be irritating to eyes, nose, throat, and lungs. The exposure can cause short-term and long-term effects, ranging from dizziness to cancer. This is a form of air pollution that occurs before the actual burning of fossil fuels. Once the oil is burned, pollutants are released into the atmosphere, damaging the balance in the existing ozone layer. The fuel burned from cars, trucks, trains, and airplanes accounts for more than half the air pollutants emissions in the United States. The release of methane and carbon dioxide also increase the level of greenhouse gases and has a direct impact on climate change. Volatile organic compounds are also released when fossil fuels are burned, which forms harmful lower atmospheric ozone. The American Geoscience Institute outlines that steps have been taken in order to reduce these emissions. In 1963, the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, passed the Clean Air Act, which controls the level of pollution that can be released into the atmosphere. The enforcement of this act leads to companies having to implement new technologies or adapt new procedures to regulate their emissions, sometimes at a significant cost. Overall, understanding how much oil we use, where it comes from, its uses, and what effects this has can help us be better at conserving fuel and in turn, saving the environment little by little. Thank you.